What are the most effective channels? How do you think about marketing when looking at the commonalities of those successful firms?
Everything, right? So that's the very general answer that everybody hates to hear, but I love to meet the firm right where they are. So each market is independently unique. So what works in Wichita, Kansas to get you to a $10 million firm and beyond doesn't necessarily mean that that same platform or audience is going to work in Los Angeles, California, right? So every market is uniquely different, and we have to be able to adapt to that. We love to be able to do tests for each of those markets, identify their clientele, where do they live at, do a lot of the demographic research so that we're making sure that we're hitting the message in the right spot. If you're in Los Angeles, it may be a completely digital play that we say, hey, this is going to work best for you. Where if you're in Little Rock, Arkansas, we may be like, hey, you don't need as much of a digital play because this is where your people are right now. And it's shifting every single year, sometimes every single quarter, as to where the audiences are. And so you have to be in a lot of places right now, but the most important thing to do is know your market, know what plays in your market, and then go hard after those things. I love building a brand, and I think nothing is better for building a brand than traditional TV and billboards at this point. But I'm also hyper focused on direct response, right? Because that's what we need from an agency right now. If we're not bringing you cases, then we're not doing our job. So you've got to meet them where their clients are, and that's usually some form of digital and traditional combined at this point for most markets.
I love that you said that. It's so I guess it's like the attention arbitrage game. So if TV in a market maybe it's oversaturated, maybe it's more digital.
Yeah.
And is that what you mean by, or is it truly maybe the demographic, maybe the individuals, maybe there's a broader number of people watching cable, right? And this market than another market.
Yeah, so you have, some markets are still underserved when it comes to high speed internet connectivity, right? So they're not as likely to be streaming their videos. So we know now we're not going to put a ton of our money into streaming. We may have to go more broadcast because that's still where they're receiving their traditional media at. And then we may go to some out of home next, which could be radio or billboards. So we'll look at that and see, like, what does this market look like? Is it overly saturated in one of these areas? And then how do we stand out? Like, how, there's a million marketers, it feels like, in every single market. And so how do we make our brand stand out, but still be very unique to the person that we are attempting to brand? We don't like to do cookie cutter type personalities with the firms that we work with. We like to make sure that they can stand behind the brand that we're creating, right? It does us no good to build a brand making someone look like a trial lawyer if they've never been to trial. Like, let's not
Mm-hmm.
go there. Like, let's make your audience understand we're going to get you the max amount of money, and let's do it that way. So there's just different aspects that we like to take a look at and see how do we make the most out of the market, and then how do we make the best out of the personality that's coming to us to deliver the message with.
I like every bit of that. And being distinctive in the market, there's nothing more painful than going into a market and all the billboards say injured question mark at the top. And it's just like, oh my gosh, it's like I kind of just tune those out. And I think some individuals listening are like, well, that's what works. I'm going to use what works. But like, no, you don't stand out. No one can remember who you are.
I'll tell you a fun story about the injured with the question mark. So back in 1997, 98, maybe 99, somewhere in that frame, it was the got milk question mark was really big.
Mm.
And so we were experimenting with things with CJ advertising back then. And so we took that injured and we did it in a similar font. We did it red with the injured, the big question mark for Houston Coleman. And we actually got featured by the ABA, their big journal that they did about how horrible it was that people were advertising, because one of our clients had actually worn that shirt to a vacation trip and was
Mm.
spotted by somebody that writes for the ABA. So it goes all the way back to that injured with a question mark from way back when, and it's still being used today, which to me is fun.
Well, and I'd say, and back then, it's like advertising is like evil, right? Which is just crazy to think because you're helping the consumers and the injured victims, right? The more awareness you have. I thought you'd be the perfect person instead of just talking about, the common SEO and LSA. I thought this would be fun. It's like there are, even in Nashville, I went and I saw bus wraps and sports
Yes.
endorsements, right? Like with the Titans and there's different types of advertising, you know, um, and the NIL and the things like that. Do you see a lot of success? Do you see the NIL? It really making an impact? Do you think that social proof and trust kind of carries over to the individual that they're sponsoring? Do you think maybe it's too costly, right? Paying an athlete in college $100,000 for
Yeah.
some
And
photography? Like, what's your thoughts on some of these kind of emerging, what I would say,
yeah.
tactics?
I mean, if the budget is there and you've maxed out the other channels that we know will drive leads to your firm, then let's go for it. Like, let's do a few of these fun things that are outside of the norm. Let's be very cautious about the NIL deals. I'm not an overly huge fan of them, just with they leave the team prematurely or, hit the transfer portal or they're still kids and they go out and they have a really good time one night and do something really stupid. And now your brand is associated with something that you didn't necessarily want it to be with. So there's a lot of vetting that has to go into that process, picking the right person, making sure that it aligns with your brand and who you are. Otherwise, it's not authentic and it's never going to resonate with your marketplace. And so we want to make sure that anything we do, whether it's Titans, Saints, Kansas City Chiefs, whatever it is, we want to make sure that we are tied in with your brand for a very specific reason and that we can align with that reason no matter what it is.